There is nothing like seeing all the generations love each other up. But this is everything for me from the weekend. Jordan with everybody challenging Magic 101. I want you to hear it again for the guy to say damn in the background. Damn! He's all of us! Damn! Jordan still got it. Let's go. Because he knows in that moment Jordan is 100% serious.
Yep. That's the event I want.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we want to see. Instead of the dunk contest, just have the great play for about a minute until they get hurt. The game, the ceremony, the greats who were there and those who weren't. Scottie Pippen. The dunk contest, we'll talk about it all, but we start with everything LeBron was giving us from this week. And it was on his future. It was on his future playing with his son, wherever his son might end up. And it was on the types of teams he likes and the types of moves he likes to see GMs make and everything that the Lakers are or aren't right now and everything that NBA is now. Israel Gutierrez. Let's start there. What do you think LeBron is telling us?
LeBron is telling the Lakers that he's unhappy with the current situation. I think it's pretty obvious when you look at his history and his past and everything that he's sort of done to send smoke signals to GMs or other people in his front offices that he's not happy with the situation. And if he can't leave and he doesn't want to leave, he's going to just press and find ways to get the GM of the Lakers to listen to him. And whether that means, flirting with Cleveland in a comeback or talking about wanting to play with his son at the end, he knows that 9th place in the West is not acceptable for LeBron James. He's been to 10 NBA Finals. This is where he's supposed to end up every single year, and this is unacceptable. So he's just basically telling his organization, hey, serious moves this offseason, because if not, when I am free to go, hey, maybe I will.
All right, two things as we turn to Pablo Torre here from what Israel just said. Smoke signals. These aren't smoke signals, aren't they? This is landing a jumbo jet. And B, yes. Israel, with all due respect, isn't LeBron in part responsible for this as well? Go ahead, Pablo Torre.
No, so the first thing is, yes, he is telling the Lakers that he needs more help, that they're not good enough, but he's mostly, I feel like, telling us, everyone else, this is not my fault. And that's where my credulity is strained, Tony, because we know that as much as he wants to pin all of this on Rob Pelinka, who, by the way, was not one of the 3 GMs he out of nowhere complimented over the last several days, as much as we know that Rob Pelinka is entitled the GM, LeBron James is the guy with as much power as an athlete than anyone we've ever seen before. He's the guy who has been pulling a lot of the strings in terms of who he wanted to play with. And so did Rob Pelinka make any moves at the trade deadline? No. Is that infuriating to LeBron James? Sure. But the problem is LeBron James does not have an out this offseason, right? Since his rookie deal, LeBron James has had the ability to basically say, if I want to go, I can go. The way his contract works with the Lakers right now is he can't. He's stuck. So what does he have left? He has these moves to make in public that are very unsubtle that signal, I need more, and by the way, don't blame me.
Sarah Spain, are we getting smoke signals here or something else?
I'd say more of a signal fire. And I used to get frustrated when LeBron would start fires because I felt like, how can you be so frustrated with the hand you've dealt yourself? Because we know that he's been sort of the GM of almost every team he's been in. But Pablo's point is the important one. He does not have an option at the end of his deal with the Lakers. And every year we've been able to talk about LeBron forcing the hand of the team he's on because he's always had an out. If they don't do the things that he wants, he could take his services literally anywhere else. They will always be wanted. And in this case, he can't. So whatever he's been doing behind the scenes clearly hasn't felt enough. The fact that Rob Pelinka sort of publicly signaled that LeBron was okay with the lack of moves at the deadline, that might have been the final straw here for why he decided to publicly air out these grievances. But his only action now is to hope that people want to come to the Lakers because it's a destination, because they want to play with him, and to sort of use these public displays to move the needle in the front office.
And Harry Lyles Jr.
Yeah, to me, this is all about the Lakers. He's obviously not happy that there was no movement at the deadline, but can we point out how not subtle it is to go out of your way to compliment an opposing GM and call them the MVP? Nobody has ever done that before. There's nothing subtle about that. LeBron is clearly upset with what's going on here. Obviously, a lot of this is his fault, but I also think that he doesn't necessarily care. I think the point to him is, I am going to force them to do something to change this for me, because throughout LeBron's career, all of his teams have been win-now situations. They've always mortgaged the future. They've been teams that are win-now. And I think that LeBron feels even more strongly about that now that he's 37 years old.
Israel Gutierrez back in.
Yeah, Tony, was this partially LeBron's fault? Yeah, but who cares? He's always had a say in situations with other GMs, and if it's not right, fix it. You've got to make things work. I'm here to perform and get the trophies. You're here to clean up my mistakes if I do that.
Pablo Torre.
I will just point out that the person who seems to care a lot is LeBron James himself. And I think he is very acutely aware of how we talk about him, and he wants us to know he's having one of the best seasons he's ever had in his life at this age, and that he's doing all he can and more, except, you know, again, there's more context here in terms of how this team was assembled we should consider in that.
Now to the game last night. Steph Curry, MVP, and all those threes, and then the game got tight and there was defense, and everything got a little bit harder, and LeBron hitting the last shot with some drama, and this is a tough shot. Wow. Harry, has the NBA fixed the All-Star game the last 3 years with the scaled ending they have? And did last night land for you?
Last night was incredible. They've definitely fixed the game. This is the best All-Star game in pro sport.
Really?
We still have.
I'm surprised to
we
hear
still
you
have.
say- okay.
We still have both of what things that we want here, because you still get the lollygagging and the fun that you want at the beginning of the game, because you like to see these superstars loose and have fun. And then once we get to the fourth quarter, you've got it where, all right, now we're seeing lockdown defense, right? Giannis is taking it seriously. Guys are actually trying to get smart, good shots up, which is what people want in the All-Star game with the lazier kind of fun stuff. And the other part of this, too, I really want to acknowledge the moment that we had last night with Steph Curry. To have all of the best people currently in your game in the arena, as well as with the greats of the game in the arena, to have Dwayne Wade and Reggie Miller and Allen Iverson spilling over each other because they cannot believe what is going on, to me, was one of the great All-Star moments that we've ever had.
Is this a face of the game moment for you? I believe that expression has been used before. It sounds like it. Sarah Spade, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I never thought it needed to be fixed because I've always enjoyed it, but this made it even better. The Elam ending is fantastic. I almost want to just employ it in all
And do you
sports
understand
and
it
get rid of
completely?
clocks altogether. It's just so good. Yes, it's so good. And it's especially good in this format because all the players seem to kind of get it early on. Let's have fun. Let's go a little easy. Let's kick in on the defense near the end of quarters and at the end of the game. For LeBron to close things out with that shot, for Steph to do what he did while everybody that's there. If there's a single best of all-time 75 player that thinks that Steph ruined the game or doesn't like how things have gone, you know, Bob Ryan style, I don't know how they could watch that in front of them and not be moved by it and not be like, wow, this is incredible. Steph and Michael Jordan are probably the only players that have made me laugh more than maybe exclaim, because I've just been, it's been absurd what they're doing. And that's what he was doing last night.
Remember smoke signals. There's some smoke signals Bob Ryan's way from Sarah Spade. Pablo Torre, how about you?
Oh, I would have killed for just Bob, picture in picture, just like, give me a box, a Bob cam, as Steph Curry is setting fire to that court. But look, I mean, I just want to laugh at something that Harry said because I believe it's true, but the best All-Star game we have is really damning with faint praise, right? Like, what are we really comparing that to? All the All-Star games are pretty much terrible. What the Elam ending has done, though, is given a structure that is innovative and different. I'm with Sarah on this completely. Like, part of me thinks, I mean, and by the way it works is basically the fourth quarter is untimed, and they add 24 in honor of the late, great Kobe Bryant to the team that is leading. So whoever hits that target score first wins the game. It gives you a game-winning shot automatically by definition. Do they have to do a thing where like they have to rule that you can't win on a free throw, which has happened once? I would like that change, but in terms of engineering drama, I love that experiment.
Pro Bowl in the NFL will outrate NBA playoff games. The baseball All-Star game is the only event for days around it. But Israel Gutierrez, did we witness the great All-Star game of sports right now?
Well, I think it is. There was a small stretch where it got a little bit, unwatchable for a couple of years. And that's when the NBA was like, okay, we're going to have to do something to encourage guys to at least play some defense, do something. All of these changes, everything everybody said, I'm a huge fan of them. I think they definitely help. But this particular All-Star game was even more special for everything else. The 75, LeBron in his hometown, LeBron hitting that shot. Steph Curry, 16 threes in a basketball game. It doesn't matter if you play defense. Like, that is difficult enough, the way he was hitting those shots, and it's just remarkable. So this one in particular, a little bit more special than some of the others.
And now, a tradition unlike any other. The Monday after the dunk contest question. Have we reached the end? Is the dunk contest over? They had a lower shooting percentage than the three-point contest. Sarah, was this a good dunk contest, a bad dunk contest, or the last dunk contest?
I'm not going to say last, but I'm going to say probably the worst. I can't claim to have watched all of them, but unfortunately I did watch all of this one. And unfortunately for Giannis, he videotaped all of this one and now has to go through and delete all of the misses, which is probably like 75 minutes worth of footage on his phone. But I like that he was hyping up his guys. It was terrible. I think maybe you bring in some of the best dunkers across the country that aren't professional players. You bring them in. They compete with a couple NBA players. I don't know. I mean, I think you've got to change it up a bit because certainly like this ain't the answer.
Pablo Torre.
You know who didn't watch all of that All-Star Game dunk contest? Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who walked out in the middle of Jalen Green trying to finally win.
They asked a lot of the greatest generation, though, don't you think? They were standing around for quite a bit during the halftime ceremony, too, that weekend.
It's kind of like an airplane. These guys have bad knees. They got to walk around anyway. I get that part of it. But the issue with the dunk contest, Tony, is one of talent, right? It is an indictment that Ja Morant, one of the greatest dunkers in game we can remember, had no interest in this. LeBron James has never competed in this. And so the question is of incentives, right? Steph Curry did it for charity. Maybe you play that angle here to get the actual superstars in it.
Israel Gutierrez, I remember a Birdman dunk contest once that was about 21 misses in a row at one point. So whether this was the worst or not, that's immaterial. Do you believe? I mean, it's also patently unfair because these guys are doing things that Jordan and Wilkins couldn't or didn't do, at least imagination-wise. Where are we with the dunk contest?
Yeah, there's definitely a ceiling there, and that's part of the problem. There's only so much athleticism we can do, every year after year and still find the same, mesmerized by these dunks and everything else. I do think the main issue, because they've gone through a couple of different formats, I think the main issue is just the personnel, the people involved, like the Blake Griffins. When those guys are involved, it's almost like it can't fail. It's almost like the league won't let it fail. They'll bring out a card for you to dunk over. It's not that impressive, but for video, it looks great, and he's going to win. And so if Ja Morant wants to do this, if, one day in the future, hopefully Zion Williamson wants to do this, these guys need to do it for pride, frankly. You can do it for charity, but for pride, but also just to kind of boost it back.
All right, Harry.
LeBron ruined it for everybody when he decided he didn't want to do it.
Word on the matter.
I think you do this better with two ways. One is incentivize it with a cash prize, like Pablo said, give it to the charity of the dunker's choice, but also you got to change the rules here. Give them 2 or 3 attempts because that forces them not just to have a plan, but we get to avoid that awkward time when they're missing many, many dunks. It's like trying to show somebody a video on your phone that won't load. It's awkward for everybody.
One more MVP from the weekend we have to mention. Monica McNutt. How great was this? The play of the weekend. Getting that microphone back from Bill Walton. Oh, big bonus coming Monica's way for her role in the Celebrity Game. We'll be back. Fire sale on the other side. It's a suspendable offense, a season-endable offense, a fireable offense for Juwan Howard. Questions being asked. There's certainly clear video. Juwan Howard's hand throwing and hitting Wisconsin assistant Joe Krabenhoff. There's even quite a bit of audio. Howard saying to Greg Gard, I'll remember that, while Gard was holding Howard's elbow. And of course, there's the post-game audio from Howard with very little contrition, some thought, maybe zero. We can discuss that in a second as well. The actual punch, if you see it as a punch or hand throw, and the reason for it all, final minute, double-digit game, Michigan pressing, Wisconsin subs having trouble breaking the press, Wisconsin calling timeout. Pablo Torre, start with the punishment first, and then how it all played out.
Yeah, I think Juwan Howard needs to be suspended for the rest of the year, Tony. So that means the 5 regular season games remaining. That means the conference tournament. That means that this is a thing that is serious. I do not believe it is fireable. I do believe that it is indictment of an adult whose job in other circumstances would be to be the guy who is disciplining his players and his employees for behavior just like this. I do think that it's interesting, though, right? I can understand why he's so mad. I understand that he can feel humiliated. I understand that all of that can speak to motive. But there is a question of the line that cannot be crossed. And yes, it's not a punch, it's an open-handed slap to the face of another coach, and that to me feels like a really hard thing to spin away, even if you believe that there can be empathy for both parties involved.
Israel Gutierrez.
Yeah, there's a lot to be disappointed with, starting with Juwan Howard and just in that handshake line, not having the cool head and being able to just deal with this at another moment. You know, maybe go to the coach afterward and speak about it then, rather than have that heated situation. But in terms of punishment, you also have to look at who escalated the situation into a hand slap, and it looked like the assistant coach, Krabenhoff, there was, after they had been separated, some was escalating it some more, still approaching toward Juwan Howard and talking to one of the Michigan players, and that's where Juwan responded with the slap. And so I think he deserves a lot of responsibility as well for continuing to escalate it, which is why I say maybe 2 or 3 games, not an entire 5.
Is that how you saw it, Harry Lyles?
Yeah, I don't think it's nearly a fireable offense. Obviously, it's bad for everybody involved, right? Because no matter what happens in the final minutes of a game, everybody is supposed to be level-headed at the end, or at least that is the expectation, and that didn't happen. If you're Juwan, obviously you can't swing on somebody. If you're Greg Gard, I obviously see why Juwan Howard had an issue with him stopping him and touching him the way that he did. And as far as the assistant goes, Wisconsin assistant that came in out of nowhere was kind of talking to some Michigan players. He appeared he might have touched one. That seemed to send Juwan over the edge. I think there's punishment here for everybody involved. And more broadly, I think in terms of handshakes at the end of games, I don't necessarily think that we need to have those, because I don't think that they exude or uphold sportsmanship in the way that people like to think.
Well, let's go back around the horn on that in a second. But first, Sarah Spain, all right? We've seen end-of-game scenarios get a little bit hairy, right? The timeout, the pressing. But that stuff goes away. We've seen handshake lines with coaches where they dap up and sometimes an elbow and sometimes they go in and have a conversation. And then we never really see what happened with Howard yesterday, and an arm being thrown, a hand being thrown. I don't want to call it a punch either, but Sarah Spain, how about you?
Yeah, first I'd like to commend Pablo on his neutrality, calling for the suspension despite being one Block M megaphone away from being a part of the Michigan cheer squad. Really nailed the answer. Yeah. I don't think it should be all the way through the postseason, though. I think 5 regular season games to close out the season is a fair suspension. You have to send a message that the person in charge of the team needs to be able to behave in tense situations like that. If the expectation is for players who are actively participating and throwing elbows and boxing out and everything are expected to be able to maintain their cool as well. I think the issue for Juwan Howard is to look at how afterwards he didn't seem to feel contrite about what happened.
So you didn't hear contrition. Do you need to hear contrition in the postgame, I guess, would be a question.
Yeah, I think, like Pablo said, you could be frustrated with the basketball choices they made. You could be frustrated with him touching your arm and stopping you. But in those cases, you still have to say, I did not behave accurately and appropriately in response to what somebody else did. You have to be able to control yourself in those situations, especially when it's just about pressing and calling a timeout.
Harry?
Yeah, I think Sarah's right. You would hope that he would be more contrite in that moment. And I think if you're Michigan, if he does not show something like that here in the next few days, then I think that that is a big cause of concern right there.
There was an incident last year, I guess, in the Big Ten tournament with Maryland, Mark Turgeon, and you understand how things get heated to the point that Harry made before Israel, get rid of the post-game handshake. Where do you come down on that?
Well, as somebody who's had to sit there and wait for athletes to shake hands with everybody as I wait to interview them, I'm not a huge fan of the handshakes after
that has nothing
go
to do
ahead
with
and
it.
just go to the locker room and do what you have to do. But no, I don't think you should have to force to do the layup, the handshake line thing. I mean, yeah, you're going to be in a situation where you just competed in a heated situation with another opponent, and you're immediately going to be face to face with them again. Sometimes
Pablo,
it's tense situations.
Sportsmanship need to abide here?
Yeah, I like the concept of it, but to me it's like the dunk contest, Tony, right? It comes down to who is doing the thing. Sometimes you'll have guys who make a mockery of the whole concept, but in the main, it could still make sense. You just need the right people to, live up to the idea.
Harry, Israel, thanks for your time. Now next, Sarah Spain. And Pablo Torre can respond in Showdown next. Showdown. Oh, I loved seeing all the greats together. And they love being together, which is great. Maybe get them a seat a little bit quicker in that very, very long tribute. But a couple people have noticed out. Michael Jordan have challenged everybody to one-on-one. Was talking trash. And a couple people noticed that Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce avoided Ray Allen, and that Scottie Pippen didn't even attend with Jordan there. Sarah, what stood out to you most?
It was the MJ bear hugs. Somebody actually made a compilation of him. The old guys, the young guys, everyone was just so happy to be with him.
Mm-hmm. Pablo?
So my question is, did Sarah make that compilation? Noted Jordan swim fan, super fan.
Yes.
But my thing is the Garnett, Tony. Anything is possible except forgiveness, apparently.
Oh, yes. Okay. Split the point. We'll move on. Showdown 2.